Okay, so welcome everybody. Super happy to have John here. He's going to talk about how to coach attorneys to sell and talk about business development in the law and the legal landscape. John is the perfect speaker for this because he's been doing business development for many, many years. He has over 30 years of law experience. He's the chief business development officer at his firm, Gould Ratner, and he's also the president of the Legal Marketing Association for
Right.
2025. So he's very, very much an expert on business development, and I'm very pleased that we have him here presenting for us today. So with that, I'll give John the floor and he can take it away.
Okay. Well, thanks, Diana. I really appreciate it. And I'll go ahead and I will keep the Q&A box open, but also the chat. I am going to share my screen, which I have slides, because you can't present without slides. Although now that I'm digging around for the Zoom share button, and there it is. Make sure I share the right thing. And hopefully you all can see that now in slide. Continue to share. Yes, there we go. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. I will expand just for a minute on Diana's intro for me. So I am the president of the International Legal Marketing Association. We are a group of about 4,000 legal marketers. You may even be some members, excuse me, on the call, the webinar. We're very much like the Association for Legal Administrators, the ALA, which I know Centerbase is really involved in. I actually work with someone who's on the ALA board, Ken Kane. He's my boss, Chief Operating Officer of Gould and Ratner. And as Diana said, oh boy, I've been in legal for, I guess, 30 years or so. I graduated law school in 1994. I practiced for a couple of years at a firm called Hinshaw Culbertson. I moved and worked at Loyola University Chicago School of Law, which actually was my alma mater too, as a academic administrator and also as the director of career services for a couple of years. Moved on to work at Catmusion at the time it was Catmusion and Zavis. Now it's Catmusion Roseman. They merged with Roseman Coleman shortly after I left. I've had my own business too. I've done a career headhunter business essentially. Also, then ended up later moving to Philadelphia and working at Drinker Biddle and Reith. I became started out as a manager, ended up as their chief marketing officer. Stayed there for several years. Ended up at my own business again, and then have been at Gould and Ratner as their chief marketing officer and now chief business development officer since 2016. And so just celebrated my ninth anniversary. So I actually like to think that I know a little bit about business development when it comes to lawyers. I've been coaching lawyers for BD now for many years at a couple of different firms and also just even on the side, so to speak. Um, Lawyers, I am a lawyer. I call myself a recovering lawyer, but I love working with lawyers. They are smart and talented people. And so I'm here today, and I think a lot of Diana mentioned a lot of the audience is members of ALA who are administrators necessarily, but also maybe some lawyers too. So this is really targeted at the people who work with lawyers, and will also be some good advice for any lawyer who's here looking to gain more business development skills, or at least maybe even just a refresher. This is not won't be an advanced course, but it is something that hopefully you'll come at the end of it with some good tools and thoughts, and maybe even just a reminder of what you need to do and what's good to do for business development for lawyers. So, any other things, Diana, that I need to mention or whatever? Leave some time at the end for Q&A. We'll be done at the top of the hour. I don't have a lot of slides, but I probably will end up talking. That's what coaches and marketers and business development types do a lot. But so let's start off with why business development matters more than ever now. It always has to a certain extent, but certainly over the last 5 to 7 years, especially, I've noticed at many law firms, there's a lot of people who are like, oh, we got to start paying attention to business development. Marketing's kind of been around for a while. Everybody has a new name, or they took 17 names and mushed them down to two or three, or we got a new logo, or we took all the names of the lawyers off and we had this pretty little thing at the top of the letterhead, all that. There was letterhead at some point. Now we don't. Do we have letterhead anymore? We've had websites, right? For 15 years, maybe 20 years, depending on your firm, maybe a little longer. Um, and so marketing's gotten a more of a comfort level, but BD has only really risen to the fore, I would say, probably over the last 5 to 10 years, at every law firm, not just some of the big law firms or some of the other ones. And I know just quick question, the slides will be available. I'll work with Centerbase to have them downloadable. Otherwise, I have my contact information at the end. I'm on Gould Ratner's website. You can email me. I put my LinkedIn there, so I'm available too. So business development matters because there's a lot of money at stake. And if you see that first bullet, the market for legal services is growing from 2 to 4% annually, according to a couple of different recent estimates. It's about $1 trillion business globally, and of that, the U.S. market is about 400 billion. And so that means there's a lot of money out there that can be made by lawyers doing work for their clients. And it's growing about the rate of inflation-ish, give or take. There's going to be some people over time, in the past couple of years, who will say, "Oh no, the demand for legal services is flat and it's declining and whatever." And that may have been true for a time, and it is certainly true in certain areas of the law. And there's always going to be market volatility depending on the actual economy, right? So if the economy is tanking, bankruptcy goes up, litigation tends to go up, corporate M&A deals tend to go down. If the economy is booming and people have a lot of money they want to invest, corporate practices tend to start zooming up and getting really, really busy. Litigation sometimes goes down, might be relatively flat. Bankruptcy goes way down usually. So there are certainly cycles with the legal industry. As it is in terms of law firms, and even if there's any folks in here who are a B2C practice, B2C practices have cycles too, and again, tied to the economy. So, um, getting out there and understanding where your business is coming from and going after more of it is definitely going to matter to you because again, the fourth bullet there is talking about growth. There's the old adage, if you're not growing, you're dying kind of thing. Everybody wants a little bit of growth. And in fact, you need some growth just to keep up with inflation these days. So, business development and making sure that you're understanding where your business is coming from and where you can go get more of it is vitally important to your law practice. So, the other sort of good news, bad news is that there's greater competition now amongst lawyers because there's are more lawyers, although that line has been sort of flattening out over time too. Um, the bad news maybe with the greater competition for it is that the competition is getting more sophisticated too. So it's definitely a game of you got to keep up with the Joneses no matter what. Otherwise, you're looking at people nipping at your heels or trying to steal your best clients sometimes. Um, the other thing I want to talk about too, that sort of we set out at the beginning, is business development is matters more than ever. Is exactly that fact. There's more competition. People are after your own clients. Everybody's pitching everybody kind of situation. But the 80/20 rule that I like to talk about with my lawyers is still in play. What does that mean? What am I talking about? So we have found, and I have many colleagues at different law firms, and so I'm not sure there's been articles necessarily about this, but we find that 80% of our business comes from current clients. So now that could be new matters from our current clients, but 80% of our business are from clients that we already have. Only about 20% is coming from new clients that we've had to do a lot of pursuit of, and or maybe they drop from the sky, although that doesn't happen anymore. So and referrals oftentimes can be a good place for new business. So you have to understand, and when we talk about business development, that sometimes the idea and the attraction of getting new clients, new businesses is out there when really a lot of the game, the vast majority of the game is keeping your current clients and doing more for them or doing new things for them, depending on the type of work that you do. So understand as we keep talking too, the balance is going to be between that sort of attractor of new clients, new work, and retain clients and new work. And so the other thing is that it's kind of fun and exciting to think about new clients. Ooh, we got new clients, and you do have to backfill clients because clients go away. If you're in the M&A business, you understand that, or the bankruptcy business, I suppose too. Depending on who you're representing, your client is going away, and the opportunities to service those clients end. There's also the idea that that attracting new clients, going after new clients costs a lot more money than keeping clients and even keeping clients and pursuing their own new business. So as we talk about resources during the next few minutes, over the next 45 or so, that's another thing to keep in mind is that sometimes business development um, means that you have to think economically about who you want to be able to pursue. So, and speaking of economics, growth, right? So growth is a factor of or equals client loyalty and retention plus attorney initiative, right? Just the fact that people are sticking around and using you still like they always have doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be growing. In fact, you could be declining. You could be doing your job so well that you're more efficient and they don't need you as much. So you need to be looking for ways to service your current clients better or more if there's opportunities there, and then obviously need to go after new business from new clients. So the other thing that's also out there that has changed over time, and certainly again is coming up to the forefront every time that there's a little bit of a disruption in the marketplace, and we talk about that in a minute. Clients demanding value, right? So, what does that mean? It means a lot of different things to different people. Value could mean things like they're rate conscious, or value could mean they want value add, so they want things for free that you don't get, that you can't charge for, or they just basically want a good relationship with you, so that you're one of the family, so to speak, or that you're always thinking about them and and looking out for them, and really being part of their business operations, not just the hired gun lawyer kind of situation. So, however that value is assessed or described by your clients is going to make a difference. And business development and client service, client retention is all part and parcel of this, of how you can keep and get more business. So, and then finally, why does business development matter? Well, if you're working at a law firm and you're a lawyer and you want to be a partner at that law firm at some point in time, your your career success at a law firm almost always is predicated on having some business and having a book of business. Now, at some law firms, some lawyers perhaps are lucky that they can inherit business. At a lot of other law firms, they're going out and either being able to build new business from current clients, or better yet, getting, new clients and new business. So that's probably a long way of clearing my throat to say, why does business development matter? But these are solid reasons, and they're reasons that if for some reason um, you encounter lawyers who are resistant to it, that you may just point to this stuff and say, this stuff matters now. Well, now speaking of what's at stake too, and we'll talk about resistant lawyers in a second. This is basically some of the stuff I've already talked about. So your stability as a law firm, right? Your revenue, your client and attorney succession is going to be all part of why business development matters and why you should be paying attention to things that are business development oriented. Growth obviously is on everybody's mind. Profitability actually is something that doesn't get talked about a lot, but business development affects profitability in many ways, not just from a cost perspective, but from a way to actually looking for things or getting new clients or new business that is more profitable to you and your law firm, right? And without some of the basic aspects of BD, if you're not practicing those or using those tools that we're going to talk about, is profitability can wane over time if you're not paying attention to it, right? So you may not be raising your rates. Maybe that's happening, maybe it's not happening, or maybe the clients are saying we're paying too much for what you're already giving to us. And so you need to think of new ways and engage with your clients or find new clients that are going to be more profitable. And let's face it, profitability matters. If you're not tracking, you probably should, at least at the client level. Some law firms have a hard time tracking profitability by lawyer because they don't want to compare lawyers, or lawyers are too competitive, or whatever your culture is, that maybe that's not doable at your firm. But what should be doable at every firm is tracking profitability by client. So, market forces are out there too. I'm not going to talk too much about technology, but of course, we need to recognize that the legal services marketplace is going to be continued. It already has, but it will continue to be affected by the disruption caused by technology. And I'm not just talking about AI and ChatGPT and all that other stuff. There's a number of reasons that technology has caused a significant amount of change over time in the legal profession, and it just will keep going. I'm not one of those people, by the way, who's going to say, oh my God, there'll be no lawyers in 5 years because AI will take over all the lawyers' jobs and there'll be nothing for lawyers to do, because I'm old. And I know why that isn't going to be true because I was a litigator to start out 30 years ago. And I didn't even have a computer on my desk, for heaven's sake. And so um, I also witnessed the advent of e-discovery. And e-discovery was going to basically kill all the litigation departments because there's nothing for lawyers to do if we have e-discovery and it's all done by computers. And then 10 years later, it was, oh my gosh, due diligence from a corporate perspective is going to be handled by all these different technologies that'll be able to look at all these documents and decide what is going to happen. And there won't be any lawyers needing to do any due diligence. Well, lo and behold, those two rather disruptive events, which by the way were real, and did change the way that law was practiced, and did change some of the way that law firms hired and kept lawyers or trained lawyers, made a difference. But guess what? There's a lot of lawyers still out there. There's a lot of firms making a lot of money, and e-discovery and the different types of technology that it became basically part and parcel of a corporate practice are still out there. What's AI going to do? It's going to just make things easier in some ways and frankly harder in others. It's just a new way of doing the same work that's out there because the lawyers are still going to be in demand because they're smart and we need smart lawyers helping clients. So, um, regulation or deregulation, depending on, I suppose, depending on the day, is going to be another big factor. That despite certain efforts made to try and slim down government at the federal level, guess what? The states aren't necessarily slimming down, and the federal government will be back up. I mean, it's just everything in life is a cycle. So there'll be more regulation at some point. If it's not in the next 4 years, it might be in 8 years, right? We've all lived through this. Those of us who are of a certain age, it just keeps coming back and forth in cycles. So regulation will drive market demand, and meaning that we have to kind of keep up, and there will be things for lawyers to do. Political and economic instability always creates opportunities for lawyers. I don't mean to say that and just sort of shrug it off, and I don't mean any particular kind. I mean, there's all sorts of political instability or economic instability out there that lawyers can either benefit from or take advantage of with their clients. And not necessarily from you're not taking advantage of clients, but you're there to provide the guidance and the counsel and be the trusted advisor kind of situation for these companies and clients who are being buffeted by this instability in one way or another. So there's a lot of market out there, and business development is, and the types of things we're going to talk about in a minute too, is all part and parcel of it. Finally, what's at stake is your firm culture, right? I mean, if you just have a culture of waiting for the phone to ring, you're not going to be around for very long. If you have a culture of just passing down the same clients, those clients are going to start to disappear. I've seen it over my career. I've watched all the mergers, and there are some law firms that have merged out of necessity because they were losing clients, losing lawyers, and losing business, and they didn't know what to do. And they didn't have the culture out there to necessarily say, you know what, we're going to go out and get more. We're going to go out and keep more. So, that's it. That's it. That's what's at stake. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here that needs to be paid attention to when you're running a firm. All right. So some of this stuff, and speaking of instability, why do lawyers resist sales, as they say? Sales is a dirty word, although that's changing, I think, too. But definitely during my tenure at a couple of different law firms, sales was a dirty word, even though there were a lot of lawyers who were selling. They just didn't call it that. And they were doing it sort of, some of them, with a lot of instinctual nature. But I will tell you, and we'll say this once again, business development skills, sales skills are learned, right? There is no such thing as a natural salesperson. Now, there may be aspects of certain people's personalities that make it easier for them to adopt some of the techniques and qualities of what we perceive or what we consider to be a good salesperson. But these are learned skills. There is no natural necessarily who is born with all of this stuff. It takes work, like everything else. And so the major thing, though, that most lawyers resist sales, and we've heard all this. I didn't go to law school to sell. Well, you're right. I didn't go to law school to sell. Look at me. 30 years later, 31 years later, I'm out teaching and helping lawyers sell. It happens. And in fact, it's maybe an indictment, maybe not, of our law schools out there that they don't teach lawyers how to sell. Maybe they should. Some have, some do, some try, but the vast majority don't. And I don't think that's anything else other than not recognizing that law firms are a business and they have a business model, and it's okay to be a business. They're a profession too, and there's a lot of good things about that, and a lot of things that make law special about that. But let's face it, Yes, you didn't go to law school to sell, but now that you're a lawyer at a law firm, you're going to need to learn how to sell. A lot of lawyers have very large egos sometimes, or those egos, even as large as they can be, are a little fragile sometimes, and they don't like to be rejected. There's not necessarily a resilience gene of any professional person. People who are really smart oftentimes can be really insecure. And fear of rejection, or even just kind of being that, the awkward turtle in the room thinking about sales, is something that makes lawyers just shy away or run screaming in fear from topics that we're talking about when it comes to sales. So that's why another reason, like I don't want to do that. I don't like doing that. I don't like to work a room. I have lawyers in my own firm who say, I don't want to go work a room. I can't do that. But I can do I can do a small group and I can talk to people in groups of two and three. Fine. Great. Talk more about how to take advantage of that in a minute. Misconceptions about BD. Oh, it's going to be a hard sell. It's going to be something I don't like it. It's icky. It's distasteful. It's not something that we want to do as lawyers. And again, that's why I use the word misconception because it is a misconception. Some of the other things though that a lot of lawyers resist sales or business development is that they say they don't have time for it. Or what it really is that they haven't necessarily structured it into their daily practice because a lot of lawyers have a lot of good discipline and they can incorporate a lot of different things into their world, into their daily practice. I mean, for heaven's sake, most of them build time in increments of what, zero point 0.1 an hour, 6 minutes. And so to be able to do that for years on end, you have to develop a certain sense of how you're managing your time. Integrating business development in it is not that hard. It's just like anything else in terms of integrating. But a lot of times they'll put up a barrier to say, well, I don't have time for that. Well, actually, you do, and we'll show you how. And confidence can be a little thing. Oh, what if I fail? Or I'm not good at this. I don't have the skills. Well, again, they can be learned. I'm not a natural. It's okay. You don't have to be a natural in order to get business. The other thing too, on the flip side, is that there's also a little bit of a reality check that a lot of lawyers need to have and aren't necessarily thrilled about, is that the ones who think that they are naturals maybe aren't. There's some litigators who think they have, as I had an old law professor say, a silver tongue, could talk their way out of anything. That doesn't mean that they're going to be a good salesperson. And just because that you like to talk doesn't mean you're a good speaker. Or just because you like to write doesn't mean you're going to be a convincing writer when it comes to trying to convince someone to hire you. So, and there's a lot of lawyers who are afraid of that and or thinking like, oh, well, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. Not that they would ever tell their colleagues or anybody else about that, but that's also behind it. And it's also a reason that lawyers tend to shy away from sales. And I'm here to say and tell everybody who will listen that it's okay. We can move past that. You didn't graduate from college knowing how to take a deposition if you're a litigator, or you didn't know how to structure a deal if you're a corporate lawyer, or any of the number of other things that you've had to learn as a lawyer over time to be a lawyer. So we can teach you on business development stuff too. So, all right. So one of the things that we talk about then is trying to get away from this whole sales talk into try to reframe it as client service or client engagement or new client engagement or prospective client referral sources, whatever. And what it really boils down to is reframing sales as problem solving. So this little chart is just a little graphic, understanding client needs is really a lot better than thinking about cold calling someone. Solving real problems is not the same as bragging about all how smart you are and how many deals you've done or how many cases you've won. Being helpful and visible is really more a way to think about it in terms of, as opposed to, oh, I'm just pushing unwanted services on people. They don't want to listen to me talk. They're not interested in me. So if you kind of reframe it as, I'm not going to cold call people. I'm not going to just brag about myself. Some people like to brag about themselves. That's okay. But that's not what sales is either. And I'm not out there to do the hard sell, right? I'm not going to push unwanted services on people. So the BD life cycle, this is a really simple model. There's so much out there about sales, and there's so much Shrek out there about sales too. This is actually something that's relatively simple. And again, there's a lot of different takes on this, but awareness, I would call awareness basically marketing, because that's what really starts business development, right? Trying to get people, and marketers talk about the funnel. And sort of marketing sits at the top of that funnel. Sales starts to take over about halfway through. And at the bottom, you end up hopefully with good work and great profitability and a client for life. This is the same way, and it is more of a cycle, by the way, than a funnel. But creating awareness leads can lead to connection, and it takes effort. And connecting can lead to trust. Again, takes some effort. Trust hopefully leads to some work. Again, takes some effort. And then work hopefully can expand. And that's again referring back to the 80/20 rule. Um, you know, Getting some work means you should be thinking about getting new work from the same client, and that's a better way to invest your time and see a return on your time and investment than necessarily always chasing the new clients. And then expansion can lead to further awareness. As maybe I'm sort of that last little arrow leading into the circle is maybe a little bit of an artifice because the only good news is that when you expand, more people know about you, and that creates even more awareness of you. So that can lead to more referrals, that can lead to more opportunities and connections. And again, the cycle repeats. So, um, what do you do at a law firm, though? And as a lawyer, thinking about this whole business development, part of what you need to do is develop a little bit of a pipeline mindset, right? Because it's something that always has to be fed, right? I started life as a journalist actually, and worked at newspapers back when they were printed, and printed every day. And one of the things that we used to do is have to put stories in the newspaper and fill this blank space that wasn't taken up by the ads. So we call it filling the gaping maw every day. Well, pipeline management or pipeline mindset is kind of like that too, but it also has a sense of, the pipeline starts where the raw materials are and doesn't end up anywhere close to where the finished product is. And it can be a big, long pipeline. There's a pipeline from Canada down through the United States or whatever. Um, in the same way, business development, it's a long-term process. It takes some commitment. It's going to be around for a while. This is not a one and done. Lots of lawyers love to check boxes. Business development is not a box checking exercise. There are boxes you can check, but then guess what? They tend to erase themselves and you got to keep checking them again. And then they erase themselves and you got to keep checking them again. I like to call it iterative incrementalism. Some people use that term, other people use all sorts of different terms, baby steps, whatever you want to say. You got to just do a little bit at a time, and you got to do it over and over and over again. The idea of a pipeline mindset is that there's constant care and feeding. You're constantly pushing things in one end to get stuff out the other end. Because the other thing, just in physics, unless the pipeline is pressurized, you don't get stuff coming out the end if you don't start pushing stuff in at the beginning. So, and again, that takes some patience, perseverance. And the other thing I like to say, and I give people hope because they see all this stuff, start thinking about it, and they get in their head, and they're like, oh my God, this is never going to happen. I can't do this. This is too much. And I said, look, you have to just do something. Talk about that in a second, too. Just do something, and I guarantee you that something will happen. But on the flip side, I can also guarantee you that if you do nothing, nothing's going to happen. So again, it's that if you take it out down to that iterative incrementalism approach, it will help a lot. And keep that in the back of your mind for those of you who work with lawyers and coaching lawyers on BD. That's going to be something is that this is a long-term investment. Maybe we can try it for small wins and small incremental wins, sure, to kind of keep up people's morale. But it's one of those things that this is long term. And so let's talk about how that's long term. I call it the BD journey for lawyers. And I've seen this at every law firm I've been at. I've talked to tons of colleagues over time, and this is basically how it shakes out. This is how I approach it with our lawyers. Obviously, most lawyers start at a law firm fresh out of law school as associates, and they work their way through. And what I counsel associates, and we do meet with associates in BD right when they start with the firm and then follow up over at least their first year a couple of different times. And we say, you know what, as an associate, the first thing you need to worry about business development, because I got a lot of them coming in like, I want to get business. It's like, well, I got to tell you, as a third year lawyer, you're not really going to get that much business because you don't know how to do anything. Because the first thing you need to do as a new lawyer or a relatively young lawyer or newly experienced lawyer, because they're not all young, is learn your craft, right? That's the most important thing. That's going to help you sell the best and help you give you something to talk about at the very least. When you get into conversations later in your career about what and how you can help people, or just trying to understand what it is about their business that maybe you could be involved in too. So, learning your craft is the most important thing I tell to all associates. And I said, everything else pales in comparison and will not be prioritized over learning your craft. And that is the truth. I will fight you on that if you disagree, kind of thing. It's one of those, to have a box to the side, learning your craft is the most important thing. Fight me, right? Um, But you also can use your time as an associate, and the associates I tell to use their time as planting seeds. Again, going back to that little graphic about the plant and watering it, nurturing your network. What network? A lot of associates. Well, you know people. You went to law school. You've got law school buddies, I'm sure, at least the people that you know or knew. Keep that network going and start to think about other networks. And also, it's the perfect time to investigate interests. Most people come out of law school and they're like, oh, I'm a corporate lawyer. Oh, I'm a litigator. Oh, I'm whatever. It's very general. But, there's a lot of different things that lawyers do for a lot of different types of industries and companies. And there's so many groups out there that you could start to join and think about, like, oh, I'm interested in food and beverage, or I'm interested in hotels, or I'm interested in private equity or whatever. This is the time you can investigate those interests. And it's relatively low cost, low risk, and it's something you can learn because, and by the way, if you find after a couple of years that what you've started down the road for, you're not really that interested in, guess what? You're not stuck. You can go find something else and you've not lost any time. All you've done is gain some good experience and insight into something that you don't want to do. And that's actually an incredibly valuable thing to know as a lawyer or working with lawyers is what people want to do or what they're interested in. Because the other thing, and this is another thing that I talk to people and they go, oh my God, I never thought of it that way. I said, most people want to do interesting work. And every single lawyer I've ever talked to, and I've talked to literally thousands of lawyers over my career, they say, I want to do interesting work. That's it. They want to do something interesting. So my whole approach oftentimes when I talk to them about business development is, what are you interested in? What do you find to be interesting work? And a lot of them sit back. The first time they talk to me about it, no one's ever asked me that. Why not? Why don't you ask yourself that? That should be your first thing. Is like, how do I get more interesting work? This is really interesting. How do I get more? Well, investigating things, following, whether that's an industry or a particular type of work, whether it's something like a niche that you want to go into. There's a lot of things that you can be doing as lawyers, especially as young or junior lawyers, associates, whatever you want to call yourself, about spending the time to investigate. So what's next in the path? Obviously, people then move from associate to partner. Now, a lot of times, and I know there's some firms that say, well, we don't have make it a partner unless you have a book of business. Well, okay. If that's what you have to say, great. Your law firm is probably out of step with a lot of law firms because most law firms I know will make someone a partner as a form of investing in them because they have two-tier partnership structures now. Most, in the olden days, there was only one tier, and did you become a partner without some business or the promise of business, or you were going to step into the shoes of someone who was retiring with a current client that was never going away? Great. Those are the old days. The new days are is we advance people to partnership as a way of investing in them and giving them a little bit of a boost. You might have some business from being a senior associate that they were able to get, or they started working on a particular client and got some new business out of that client that they can take credit for. But a lot of times, being a new partner means you still don't have much business. But now you're in a position that you sound kind of credible. First of all, I got that fun partner title. And also, you can go out and you can talk to people about stuff that you've done because you really know your craft. The next step that I talk to most new partners then is you got to really learn your clients now in a way that I think sometimes as associates, that associates oftentimes can be a little bit more of an assembly line job, depending on the type of work and depending on the client. As a new partner, you can start to really dig into specific clients and learn what they are all about and what they do and what keeps them up at night and those types of things. So that's the journey of a new partner, and that leads and can oftentimes, a lot of times, almost all the time, will lead to some new business of some ilk. When you start learning your clients and visiting your clients or engaging with your clients outside of a specific matter. So, the other thing that new partners oftentimes can do then is being more visible, right? They have a chance now that they can start speaking at conferences or they write articles or share things online or whatever, and it says partner and they feel good about themselves and they can really start to be a thought leader or they can start to meet people and network in a way and be seen as an authority of some sort or just someone that might be interesting to talk to by some potential clients too. And last but not least, there's still skill building. You're still honing your skills as a new partner oftentimes. And that's good and that's important. But now it's maybe as important, or sometimes every once in a while, depending again on the type of lawyer that you are or where the market has been changing, maybe honing your skills isn't your top priority necessarily. You've got other things that are counterbalancing it. So as you move into your 40s and you're more of an experienced partner, I chose that word carefully. Oftentimes that can translate into like, an equity partner or someone who has, business. You're going to be deepening those relationships with your clients. You're going to be providing more value to those clients because you can, and you know more about them, and you know more about the world, and you can anticipate opportunities. And you can then again take those initiatives. That's what being a more experienced partner can be and lead to in terms of your business development. And in some ways, it gets easier. Some ways it doesn't, but I guarantee you it will get easier and it becomes a little bit more natural because you've been doing it now for 10, 15, 20 years. Um, and it becomes maybe a little more stressful because you realize you got to keep doing it in order to stay afloat and be maybe make the kind of money that you want to be making. But a lot of partners are able to do this just fine. Literally thousands of them, tens of thousands of them across the country. And then as a senior partner, your role changes too. And BD still is important to senior partners. People are like, oh, I can just lay back and slide down and retire at whatever age I want to retire at. No, but you have a role to strengthen ties with those clients because you've known them for so long. You're going to be able to provide the wise counsel that will help bring in business because, oh, this guy or this woman knows what she's talking about because she's been doing it for a while. And that's important to us as a client. And then obviously preparing for transitions too, which is business development, right? The handoffs are some of the most important things that you can do in terms of business development as people move on, either retiring or into maybe other roles too. Sometimes people take new roles at firms and they need to hand off clients. So that's the journey from associate to senior partner, and it's a long one, and that's why BD is also a long one too. All right, so back to now to some brass tacks. We've got about 20 minutes or so left. And a lot of you hopefully were on here and like, okay, I need to get something out of this thing. I'm giving out my lunch hour and you're eating your salad or chomping on your sandwich and now you're like, okay, he's been talking a lot about stuff that I don't necessarily need to use. How about some tips? Here we go. So, five practical habits that build business. My first thing that I tell people, like, what should I be doing? Something. Do something. There is so many different things you can be doing in terms of business development, but just do something. Sometimes it could be 10 minutes a day, whether it's the beginning of your day, whether it's on your lunch break, whether it's at the end of the day. If you commute and you can read a computer screen like you're on a train or something, or someone else is driving you on a bus, please don't do this on the expressway. I live in Chicago, and so we call them expressways. But I mean, don't be driving and trying to do this. But checking out LinkedIn or listening to the news sometimes is helpful, or listening to some sort of or reading some sort of specialized content in an area that you're interested in, and notice that I'm not saying you have to actually interact with anybody, but that is actually research, the type of research that can help you later as you do some of the other things that you need to do in terms of business development. Being informed, being curious, just doing something, liking a post for heaven's sake on LinkedIn, right? Takes one click, do it. Comment. Hey, you can do that too. Even if the comment is like, that was interesting, thanks, or great job, or congrats, all those things just something because it gets you into this habit. And I use a word that some people don't like, hygiene. This is good business development. Hygiene is just get in your head that you're going to do something every day. So more specific tasks that then can be done is checking in on email or a call every week with a referral source, with a client, with someone from your network. Talk in a minute if you want in terms of creating lists of contacts, right? And then prioritizing those lists of contacts into, group A, B, and C, or one, two, and three, or red, yellow, green, however you want to do it. But just do at least one reach out and an email or a phone call every week, one lunch. And no sense just saying one. If you want to do more, great, right? Don't kill yourself now. In fact, one check in a day be about my max then if you're really, really gung ho, but you'll get burned out pretty fast if you do that. And you can have more than one lunch, coffee, or breakfast every month. But you know what? Once a week starts to get to be a lot. That's 4 or 5 hours a month just kibitzing with someone and different people, obviously, too. It can be a lot depending on your practice. So at least, but you have to do it at least once. And twice would probably be better, but start with one if you haven't really done this. It's like exercising. The first time you exercise, you feel like you're going to die if you haven't exercised in a while or ever. And so, you want to ease into it a little bit. And as you feel more comfortable, can you increase the number of contacts and outreach? Sure. But there's going to be a point of diminishing returns too. That's for the advanced BD webinar. We'll have that next, I suppose. It's important to track your outreach somehow, right? Even nowadays, there's so many different ways, but that you could use electronic tools. But you know what still works? Pen and paper too, right? So however you operate your life in terms of getting stuff done, I wouldn't advise you to pick out something new and go, hey, I'm going to do my BD on something completely new because then you won't do it. You will drop it, you'll do it for a week, and then you'll forget about it. And a month later, you'll be like, boy, I haven't done anything related to BD. Yeah, because you didn't put it into the regular system that you use to track other things, right? If you're a litigator, you got to have a docketing system. If you're a corporate lawyer, you got deadlines for all sorts of things in terms of compliance or other fun things that I don't even know more about because I was a litigator, not a corporate lawyer. But tracking is important. And then again, this is maybe an offshoot of tracking. Perhaps use your calendar, whether that's a paper calendar or a Outlook or some of the other different calendars that you then have follow up that you're going to do, right? So if you do take someone out to lunch or breakfast or coffee or whatever a month, calendar something a month or two later. Follow up with Bill, with Susie, with whoever it was that you took out to that coffee, lunch, or breakfast to say, hey, how's it going? Hey, I enjoyed lunch. Want to do another one? Or something like that, depending on what it is. But you need to calendar those reminders because we all get busy and we're all going to forget. So, those are five very practical habits that can build a business over time. And it's good to get into the habit of doing these things. And it takes a little work at first, like every habit that needs to be built, right? But this stuff works. All right. Everyday business development tactics that can feel natural. And I'm laughing only because I've had so many lawyers in my career, and it's gratifying. They say, you gave me this advice, you told me to do it. I wasn't thinking it, but I figured I'd give it a try. Lo and behold, hey, I got a call back. They want me to pitch. I'm like, huh, how interesting. Mean you actually followed the advice and it worked. Hey, look at that. Well, and again, I'm telling you, this stuff does work, and it's not hard. So these tactics can feel, like your comment I mentioned on LinkedIn. That's the easiest low-hanging fruit ever. You can hide behind your desk and do it. You can be, sitting in a dark room on your phone and do it. It's not that hard, but it's something, right? Sharing articles. That's the other thing I talk about when you spend 10 minutes reading something that's interesting to you and figure out who it might else be interesting to. Sharing that. Share on LinkedIn. I don't know, share on Facebook. I wouldn't do that really, but maybe some B2C people would need to do that because they build up their consumer um, folks in that way. Maybe that makes more sense. Email's obviously the best way. We're getting into texting now too. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but a lot of the younger lawyers don't like email anymore, and a lot of our younger potential clients aren't going to do that. And depending on the type of industry, I have lawyers at my firm who work with clients. They've never emailed. I'm like, what do you mean you've never emailed? I talk to them all the time on text or WhatsApp or whatever. I'm like, oh God, that kills me as a BD person because our technology hasn't necessarily caught up with that. But this is the way the world is moving, right? So, however, it's best to get in front of people that you hopefully know that they like to be contacted with. Notice I still make a phone call if you want to. Sending firm updates. Get your contacts onto the lists of emails. Every firm sends out client alerts on whatever the newest thing is, whether it's taxes or labor and employment or corporate law, or maybe the last Supreme Court case that's going to affect X, Y, or Z about your business. Get it out there. Get your name out in front, maybe not specifically your name, or better yet, get your own version of it and then forward it yourself, going, hey, I thought you might be interested in this. Post it up on LinkedIn or repost it when your firm posts it. There's lots of things you can do to get in front of your network on things like this. Offer to make introductions, connect to people. That's another one that can just feel natural. Hey, oh, hey, you should meet my friend X. He or she is really great because you do the same things. You should introduce yourself. Um, inviting people to events. That could be an entertainment oriented event, or it could just be a little cocktail party. I felt, I want to get to know you more, invite them to an event. It's a little more old school. Sometimes people like that, sometimes people don't. You gotta kind of feel it out. But always being more inclusive rather than less inclusive to people in terms of BD activities is usually the better, ends up being a better result over time. And don't pester people, I suppose. But if people say no, say, oh, well, maybe next time, or talk to them about, oh, is that not something that you're all that interested in? That's fine. Anything you would be interested in, and be flexible, obviously, too. And then finally, I've said this more than once now, but being curious, so helpful to business development. Just wondering what people do all day. Sometimes, not yourself, and hopefully not people at your firm, because you should know that. But what do people in the businesses that you're interested in being their lawyer? What do they do all day? What do they worry about? The other thing that oftentimes people forget is we have all these wonderful tools in Google now. You can set up a Google alert that if any time, your best client, Acme Corp or whatever, or your best client that you'd like to have, Acme Corp, is in the news, you can set up an alert that pings you in your email that says this company was mentioned in the news and here's a link to it. It's really easy. It's free. You can do that for people too. I have alerts set up for some of our top lawyers, top rainmakers who are involved in a lot of external things. I every once in a while I'll get a pop up, so and so just mentioned in the news on a Google alert. There are other services, by the way. Talkwalker is another one that's partly free, partly not. Some of your firms may have Cision or some other types of media monitoring services out there. Use them. Use them for BD purposes, not just to look for, oh, did they get sued? That's an important aspect that perhaps of your clients, the stuff that they care about. But they're going to be announcing or in the news about so much other stuff that you can have conversations about that. New acquisitions, or they opened an office, or they opened this, or just had a new CEO, or they just declared a dividend, or any number of things about potential clients can be in this news. And the fact that you cared enough to understand it and then reach out about it tells a client or a potential client, hey, this person actually could be helpful to me or cares about us in some way, shape, or form that's actually better than people the rest of the world doesn't care about. So, again, be curious and asking good questions is part of that. Just being able to talk about something that's about something else and not yourself is a huge thing when it comes to business development. Okay. So tools. Now this is something that is going to maybe potentially cost money or maybe not. But the tools that make business development easier for lawyers. And again, this is both for lawyers and the people who support them or counsel them or coach them or whatever. Um, have a written BD plan. Write down what you want. Write down what you want to do. Write down who you want to do it for, with, however. Um, that's easy, so easy. Um, Use Word. Obviously, you can make pen and paper, but there's other tools and stuff out there, technology that you could work on. There's project management tools, all this stuff. But at the end of the day, the easiest thing to make your BD efforts more successful is a written plan. And fine, even the process of writing it and then you stick it in a drawer for 3 months will still help you more than not doing it. Because then I'd also say then every 3 months, at least send your calendar appointment to go look at what you put in the drawer. And depending on what you have been doing, hopefully, you'll find that you've made progress on that plan and you have actually things to add to it, things to check boxes off of. So, a CRM, I'm not going to tell you to go and buy a CRM, but think about this idea of having contacts all in one place. And I will tell you, Outlook isn't that great for that, but in a pinch, it works. Actually, what works better, honestly, is spreadsheets then too, or smart sheets or Excel is a better way to track contacts if you don't have a chance to do a CRM. Believe it or not, some of the email services that people use, like MailChimp, or Constant Contact at their firms. Those are now turning into a little bit of mini CRMs because it's a place where you can store the name, a phone number, email address, company name and job title in a way that's easily accessible and reportable and downloadable and exportable and all those ubbles that you can use for business development and marketing too, obviously. Have a simple to-do list, by the way. That's a great tool. And there's any number of electronic to-do lists, setting reminders, calendaring things. I know this sounds so easy and like duh, but it's really about the execution. These tools will help you do things. Client monitoring, I just mentioned before. Client dashboards. If you have and are sophisticated enough to have an accounting system or a CRM and accounting system that are linked, link them and make sure that you can pull in and create client profiles and client dashboards to say, this client has billed us or we've collected this much this year, or have a relationship system in there. Something called ERMs. I didn't put it on the slides, but there's ERMs which are like a CRM, but they're kind of big brother, and they go in and they look at all the emails and phone calls or meetings that have been set up through the Microsoft Exchange server, and they go and they're perfect for answering questions that loop around firms all the time. Does anybody know anybody at X bank? Or does anybody know anybody in the office of so and so in so and so place? And oftentimes, those types of programs can help you surface up that stuff in a way that hopefully isn't too big brother, but these are firm resources, so might as well use them to the benefit of the firm. And lawyers do work for the firms, obviously. Cross-selling cards is a little bit more advanced, but what I mean by that is understanding what else does your firm do not just the stuff that you do. And sometimes that can mean you either make your own little cross-selling cards, flashcards, whatever, or a note sheet that says, I'm a litigator, but here's what we do in corporate M&A work, or here's the type of private equity funds we've represented over time, or here's our bankruptcy and collection services, or whatever. Because you need to understand what else your firm does in order to be able to sell and or cross sell easier, make your life a little easier. Sometimes even just the first couple of sentences off the website description, you could write that down in a sheet that you can reference if you're talking to somebody or when you're emailing someone. Hey, we can do this. My partner Bill does this type of work. In fact, what he does is X, and just cut and paste it. All right. If you're firm leadership, you should already know this, hopefully, but just as a reminder, or maybe education, you need to create time and space for BD, but you also need to provide the resources for BD too. And sometimes that may not be it may be a little pricey depending on what it is, but you can be economical without being cheap. You need to provide resources for people to take someone out to lunch or dinner, right? You need to provide resources and time and space for people to go out and take those meals and maybe even give them credit or a little bit of credit in terms of their hours if that's something that they get evaluated on and track their time. Ask them to put in, oh, I spent 2 hours at lunch with so and so from this X company or client or whatever. And so that tracking in it, I mean, the non-billable numbers are at every law firm. Trust me. Make some for marketing and business development if you don't already have them, and don't make it, pardon my French, BS. I won't say the full word. Things like cleaning my desk or organizing my files. That's not, you dump that stuff into marketing and it becomes worthless. True marketing and business development tracking should include substantive things like firm names, people's names, titles, whatever, and potentially even the opportunities that are coming from them so that you can do something more again and again. Once it becomes in a time billing system, it's real and can be reported on and exported and brought to bear amongst any number of ways, whether it's evaluations at year end or just trying to, again, build BD plans. If you can do coaching and the related feedback, that's awesome. There's a lot of good BD coaches out there. They're not that expensive. You can pick a cohort of maybe a half a dozen people at your firm, pay a consultant 100, 200. Well, okay, that's cheap. Maybe a couple $100 an hour per person, or do a group discount rate with the consultant. I'm sure you could get a deal. And just engage, right? Or hire an in-house resource. That's partly what I do. So there's lots of ways, but providing that outlet, and don't make it just talking to management, because management isn't always going to be good at coaching because you sort of bifurcated or competing priorities and maybe even loyalties to what you need to get done versus what the lawyers need to be able to do and have time and space to do that. But then also too, if you're going to do BD, you need to provide some incentives and reward effort too. So you can't just do BD for the sake of doing BD. Yeah, rising tide lifts all boats. Yeah, but can I get a little bonus on the originations I brought in? Is that 5%, 10% more? Well, everybody's going to get paid because everybody's going to earn money. Okay, but guess what? In the real world, people want incentive and reward that's a little bit more set and a little bit more um, uh, tangible at the end of the day than just the often illusory promise of a bonus at the end of the year necessarily that's based on, oh, well, if we do well, we'll give you a bonus. Well, people want a little bit more than that. All right, we won't get too far deep into that rabbit hole. Okay, so what about in terms of coaching people? Understand too, one size doesn't fit all. Now I'm going to race because I have 4 minutes. Creating BD profiles of some of the people is also good. There's a lot of resources out there about people who are trusted advisors or activators or connectors or those types of things. I'm happy to talk to you about some of those things. That's again a little more advanced than we're talking about today, but understanding that one size doesn't fit all. If that's your only takeaway from how to develop a BD program for your lawyers, and get BD in the water, so to speak, understand it. Everybody's going to have to do something different, and that's okay, right? Because again, people will do what they're interested in. So find something that interests them that's related to BD, and let them go, and give them the resources, and egg them on. Again, that's the aligning tactics with personality and goals, and learn from internal role models too. By the way, I've had good rainmaking conversations from our senior partners who have millions of dollars in business. Talk to our associates, and guess what? Not we have got, I think, at least, I have a small firm, so I'm thinking like every year we have at least 6 to 8 people with well over $1 million worth of business. I guarantee you every single one of them does something different, and we've had them talk about the different things that they do with the different types of clients to associates and income partners, which we are the junior partners and the new partners, whatever you want to call them. And they learn something different from each of them, and they can start to internalize and say, "Am I like this person or am I like this person? Do I like doing this or do I like doing that?" And understand that there is, again, back to the one size doesn't fit all. All right, counseling approaches and coaching approaches. Help, don't hustle. We talked about that, right? That's really salesy. It's about them, not you, right? Use the rule of 2 ears, one mouth. So listen more than you talk, and understand that trust is earned daily, right? Just because you did something good for someone once upon a time doesn't mean that they still trust you, especially if you haven't talked to them lately, or it's been a long time. They might like you, but they may not trust you because they don't have anything more updated about you. So understand that when you're coaching people, say you got to keep up. You got to keep up with people and constantly be interacting with them for them to keep trusting you on things. Because trust is a choice; it's earned, and the trust of the client is a choice, and you have to be up there every day, or at least. No, I mean that's a little shibboleth there, but I mean every day is important. All right. Um, Coaching attorneys, this is just basic things. Ask questions, listen to them. Don't boil the ocean for having to say, counsel, I want to do this. And it's like, okay, that's going to cost $1 million and take 10 years. How about something we can do in a week that costs $100? So practicing sometimes, right? We've done sessions, large and small groups that basically how to work a room or how to have a conversation over coffee, how to ask good questions, how to listen and ask good follow-up questions without trying to have being anxious about what it is you need to say. And then at the end too, debrief, right? If you won, you lost, it was great, it was not, what made you feel good, what made you feel weird, what was weird about it. And again, this is more of the check-ins, the coaching mentoring program or process or small cohort at least of people who are interested. Start with a coalition of the willing. Share dashboards if you can do it. Have a marketing and BD team that's empowered to work with these people too, right? You might want to set limits, I suppose, but most marketing and BD people are smart enough to realize that every dollar they spend is coming out of some equity partner's pocket. So they're not going to be necessarily doing crazy things or want to do crazy things in terms of their BD. They want to do what's sensible and is good and will benefit the firm. They're really, really good people. Common mistakes to avoid. One size fits all. Don't push reluctant lawyers. You got to convince them and cajole them. Ignoring your junior people is never a good idea. I don't think anybody does that anymore. But just in case, you at least ask yourself, are we doing enough for them? Treating BD like a side project. Oh, I'll get to that when I get to it. No, you won't. Oh, I'm too busy right now. My caseload is so big. Guess what? It's not always going to be like that. And then you're being down to the dumps and you'll be like, oh, I need to go out and work on people. Well, that's fine, except you might have more business if you spend a little bit of the time while you were so busy keep reaching out on a regular basis to people so that when the matters close or the case gets settled or the deal closes or whatever, you have something more to do and you don't just have to go flip a switch and go, oh, it's BD time now. So, and don't try and cheap things out. You can do things economically, but don't be a cheapskate. Cheap BD never results in anything good because people will be turned off and they just think you're being cheap. So speaking from experience working with lawyers, but you don't have to be crazy either. And then finally, your culture is this: start early, don't skimp, engage, prioritize, encourage, incent, reward, celebrate wins, wash, rinse, repeat. So, and then this will be on the slides. Here's something you can do just today. And then there's that. I can't believe I ran out of time, but that's okay with only 21 slides. So there's my contact information. People are running off to their next meeting, I'm sure. But always happy to talk about this. As you can tell, I'm a little enthusiastic about this stuff. So, in fact, depending on what it is, you're like, stop talking already. So that's it for me. I will stop my share. I didn't have any chance to look at the chat, but
No
Diane,
questions.
anything?
Thank you, John. This was great. We will be sending out the recording and the slides. John will get them to me, and then I'll send it over to you probably this afternoon or tomorrow. So thank you so much. It was awesome.
Had a blast. Hopefully, people got something out of it.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for
All right.
coming.
Take care. Have a
Bye.
good day.